Chapter 41 to 45. We walked in silence towards one of the arenas in the vicinity. There were several places that one could go for the more physical applications of testing or sparring. Not all of them were wide open like where Rin or Luvia fought, many were private, and you merely needed to pay a fee to rent them. I of course swept the entire room for any third parties trying to peek. It is not too late to recant. Artoria gave me a look, stepping to one side of the arena. Then accept my words as truth. I retorted. She frowned. It seems I must end this foolishness with action. It seems I must beat some sense into you then. I replied, realizing that she was quite the stubborn woman. There was no call to action, no indication of the battle starting. She stared at me and I could see that she was content to allow me to make the first move. Of course, she was a servant, she probably felt it would be bullying if she immediately came after me. I raised an eyebrow, bringing out Mirage. My glass sword beamed with enthusiasm as the iridescent colors cascaded from a small swing. She responded by summoning her armaments, the attire of a knight covering her body, her regal form looking all the more splendid covered in steel. She held something in her hand, something impossible to see with the naked eyes. A weapon, a noble phantasm. Only by using my acute senses could I just see the faintest glimmer, the smallest fluttering of wind around her true weapon. Invisible air. Elevated to the level of a noble phantasm, used as almost a sheath for her true sword. It was condensed wind-based magecraft, so many layers applied upon one another that it made the weapon invisible. I shook my head. It wasn't time to get lost in thought regarding her weapons. Reinforcement. Ebony flesh. I didn't stop. The boosted gear appeared on my hand. Boost. My body was filled with power, strength beyond what should be possible for a mortal. She looked at me in surprise for a brief moment before steadying her expression. I frowned slightly as she just sat there, allowed me to cast all these spells. She wasn't taking me seriously. This wouldn't be a repeat of the fight against the samurai. I was playing to win now. I had a strange thought. I pointed my finger right at her. Turn undead. Her body twitched ever so slightly, and I just tilted my head in amusement. Honestly, I didn't think that would work. I was just curious at the result. It seemed like that was enough of a call to action, because she moved fast. It was all I could think about as I pushed myself backwards and cast a distort. Images of me filled the room, surrounding her. I summoned hundreds of ice spears in the air to fly down at her. She swung her sword up, knocking them away with a burst of magical energy, only a few even getting close, but her innate magical resistance made it so she could shrug them off without a conscious effort. Every movement of her sword, dozens of my illusions dispersed. She unveiled an unfathomable level of swordsmanship. I merely touched the tip of the iceberg with my spar before. Abruptly, her eyes turned right towards me. Even with copies of me everywhere, she could find me so easily. What a frightening instinct. Ha! Artoria swung her sword down on me, so quickly that I had no time to retreat. Instead, I met her attack with my own weapon, a shockwave bursting from the epicenter. The ground under me cracked and splintered as I was pushed. My knee touched the ground, barely fending off her strike with my own sword. Surrender. She pushed her sword down just a bit harder, my arms tensed under the strain. You surrender. I grunted, forcing a smile on my face. Boost. Her eyes widened as I got a second wind and knocked her weapon back with the new burst of strength I had. Spell circles began to swirl around my blade, lighting up with the obvious signs of spellcasting. A multitude of colors burst out as I tilted the point of my sword right at her in that narrow opening. Ether cannon. A golden light met my spell as a cascade of different colors flew out in every direction. The conclusion was obvious. I had barely pushed her back a few feet and her golden sword shined bright. I hadn't had time to charge up anything substantial, but it was still an impressive spell. Unfortunately, it was all for naught. Beautiful. I admired the naked sword before my eyes. Excalibur, the sword of promised victory. I see you're taking me seriously then. You have a surprising number of tricks, but they will not defeat me. She gripped her weapon with both hands. We moved simultaneously, swords blurred at insane speeds. Every swing, I was on the losing end of the exchange. This wasn't surprising. I knew she was still faster and stronger than me. How many more boosts would I need to match her? I could only lament my lack of skill compared to her. I was practically cheating using my equipment to catch up. An overhead slash, I blocked it with my gauntlet, sweeping Mirage from the side even if my arm shuddered under the force. She simply countered by sliding her sword off and deflecting my blow. She pushed into my space, shouldering me in the chest. The force almost made me spit blood. My feet dug into the ground in an attempt to keep my balance. I had a small window, so I gathered runes on my hand. Bindings of Gaia. The roots sprang up, surrounding her, but I didn't finish. Several runic circles ignited around me, crackling with powerful magics. Lightning. I called out again, not even giving the roots time to fully actuate. I rained all manner of spells down. Fire sprang up from the ground, ice bombarded from the sky. My lightning bolts continued to fire off as each spell circle finally ran out of magical energy. In that brief moment, dozens of spells are collided with that singular location. Her form obscured by all the magical effects, only for a golden blade cut through everything. I could barely see her spin her body, slicing through her bindings and mitigating every spell that came her way. What ridiculous magical resistance. You are a very impressive mage. If I were not a servant, perhaps your spells would have reached me. She looked at me, the ground torn asunder where she stood, but otherwise untouched. I felt the ring on my ring and pulled out another item. I saw her eyes narrow as she saw the second sword I was holding. She took a true stance this time, her weapon lifting up to her side, parallel to the ground. A moment later, she moved, using her body's momentum and spinning on her heel to put all her weight into an overhead swing. I had no choice but to block with both weapons. I could feel her small hesitance towards my second sword. I knew how she felt, as it was also something I could feel just holding it, but it was able to provide some sort of suppression on her. Boost. I surprised her again, gaining the momentum back. She must have been wondering the limits of my gauntlet at this point, but I doubt I can take her by surprise again. I knocked back her sword, stepping into a stab that was without her usual strength and speed, deflecting with Mirage and swinging at her with Ascalon. She recovered faster than expected, blocking my new noble phantasm, the sword she deemed the bigger threat, but Mirage followed up, moving towards her neck at insane speeds. She took a half step back, the tip of my weapon missing her by a hair's breadth. To her absolute skill, she did not even dwell on it, knowing the path of my sword without a second glance. But this was my only chance. I dropped Mirage, much to her astonishment, as I opened my gauntlet-clad hand. Pierce. Her guard was completely destroyed. She twisted herself in an odd way to avoid the nearly point-blank burst of power. I wasn't done. FUS, my voice bellowed out, completely disabling her footing with the invisible force rippling out and slamming into her. Her back legs stomped into the ground, as to not be blown away. I followed up with a swing of Ascalon. What happened next was so quick it was a blur even to my eyesight. She moved at a much higher speed than she had previously, able to regain her composure so quick. My sword flung into the air, trailing down a fair distance away, stabbing into the ground, and I felt the warm touch of her sword at my nape. You have lost. Artoria said with no small amount of pride in her voice. I think she's really the competitive sort. You went easy on me. I just sighed, realizing to the extent that she held back. Every time I took it up a notch, she matched me, and even at the end she pushed way past my limits. Perhaps, but you reached me regardless. She replied, the smallest line of blood dripping down her cheek. Fighting a servant and managing to draw blood, it is no small feat. If I were willing to blow this place up, I may have been able to do more than that, but alas, this is my current limit. And it wasn't like she couldn't do the same. If she wanted to, her casual swings could easily bring this building down. In hindsight, there were a few more things I could have done, perhaps more kinetic force behind some physical attacks. It made me wish I had the staff for this particular moment, but what can you do? Well, I lost. I fully admitted. We had never agreed on a prize if I had one. She dismissed her armor and sword, returning back to her normal clothes. What do you want? I tilted my head. It wasn't like I would duck out of a true defeat. If I lost, I would pay up any reward she wanted at this point, and it's not like she would ask something ridiculous from me. You fought valiantly. I have been forced to reevaluate some thoughts I have had. She said quietly, contemplating various thoughts. Well, at least I got through to her a bit. Rin explained to me some concepts about this era, what a date is. An evening spent in the company of another to see if both parties desire to further a romantic relationship. For my prize, I have never experienced such a thing before, and I find myself curious. Her cheeks turned the slightest pink, her gaze turning away from mine. I'm pretty sure that wasn't Rin's exact wording, but it wasn't exactly wrong either. Well, the pain I'm feeling suddenly felt worth it. That lass, she is practically a dragon in human form. Tell me about it. I think I have new bruises now. And I don't think there is in doubt about what she is. You know, I'm starting to think I like women who can beat me up. Wouldn't be surprising, devils in general worship strength, dragons also do the same. Yeah, that makes sense. How are you feeling? Pretty decent, all things considered. I moved my body around, still a little sore after boosting so many times, and my stamina was drained pretty heavily. You're getting better, and with your bloodline fully coming out it seems like your overall strength has gotten a nice increase, otherwise you wouldn't have been able to hold your own in physical combat so well. Yeah, servants are ridiculous, and she wasn't even going all out. If she were serious, a single swing of her sword would have demolished the building with ease. And that wasn't even taking into account her unleashing her noble phantasm or utilizing her other skills. I seem to recall she has an ability that could give her a large boost for a few moments at the cost of a chunk of magical energy. It was also good to get another perspective. Adding in my magical repertoire showed me a few more flaws in my combat abilities. The most obvious thing, there was such a huge divide between my martial and magical abilities, and I don't mean in the realm of strength. It was like, I couldn't combine them in any meaningful way, they both were just, there. I had walked around the campus here for a while, just enjoying the day. It seemed like several people saw me and just turned and walked away. I guess knowledge of me has started to spread, good. I wonder how long it will take for someone to do something stupid. Well, it's not like I'll be staying specifically here for that much longer, only a few days, and I should be making my trip to the Land of Shadows, and who knows how long I'll be there. Though I will be here back and forth quite a bit, well, we'll see what happens in the future. I think anyone would want to approach me is just watching and waiting for now. I'll deal with that nonsense when it comes. Speaking of, I should go back and check in. Maybe the old man needs some stuff from me. I would rather the project not get delayed because I was absent. A hop, skip and the upscale living areas were not far away. No way Zelrich would be living among the common folk. He wasn't exactly the snooty sort, but he did appreciate the finer things and he would acquire the best if it were available. You! Rin shouted as I walked inside, grabbing me and pulling me into grandfather's office. I just blinked, getting forced down in a seat as the man himself turned around in his chair, staring at me menacingly. Does the defendant have any words to speak in their defense? He tapped his fingers together. I want a lawyer. Denied. Rin answered, looming over me. You have some explaining to do. You know, I have the strangest urge to flee at the moment, funny thing. I flexed my hand, feeling around in my ring, until I felt the connection shut off. Zelrich just wagged his finger. There will be no magic in my courtroom. Oh pooh. I believe I have a right to know what charges are against me. May the prosecution present her case. Zelrich ushered to Rin, seemingly ignoring me. Rin nodded, pacing around the room. A couple hours ago I was deep into my research when I was interrupted by my servant, the victim, stating that she required my help. She narrowed her eyes at me. Apparently, she was asked out on date. A date? Zelrich repeated. And which dastardly villain seeks to corrupt our pure and innocent saber? He is sitting here in this courtroom right at this moment. She slammed her hands on the desk. I see. Zelrich nodded. And what does the prosecution recommend for punishment? Immediate execution. She declared, pointing towards me. Accepted. He leaned back. I gave him a deadpan look. Sitting up I flicked Rin on the forehead. Ow, she whined, rubbing the spot. Is this really necessary? I asked. Zelrich just shrugged. Is anything necessary? Oi, don't start going all philosophical. I sighed. Why are you both acting like I'm asking for her hand in marriage? It's a first date, it's entirely possible that nothing even comes of this. How did you even get Saber to agree to date? Rin asked. Let me answer your question with another question. Why the hell does she think she has no charm or appeal? Rin threw her hands up. I have no idea. I've been trying to get her to stop thinking that way, but she just won't accept anything I've said. How did you convince her to go on a date? She started some bullshit about not being attractive. I denied it was so, but she doubled down. I had no choice but to force the issue, challenging her to a duel, and if I won, I get to take her out. I explained. You won against her? Rin looked surprised. Fuck no. I laughed. She kicked my ass, but I think I got through enough. She seemed to accept I wasn't trying to pity her or any other weird thoughts she has. Yeah, regardless of the outcome, I just want to take her out and have some fun. Well, this is wonderful news. Zelrich said happily. Rin had approached me not long ago about this very issue, and I admit this isn't exactly my area of expertise. He then turned towards me. I hope I don't need to explain how cross with you I will be if you are merely playing around with the young woman. I admire Miss Pendragon very much and I would hate to have a very different conversation about her with you. Really, a shovel speech? I raised an eyebrow. Besides, do you really think I'm that kind of person? I do actually like her, you know. Rin looked at me, eyes slightly narrowed. Her physical attractiveness aside, I find her temperament very charming. Did there have to be more than that? I don't think there's a threshold where you must reach to be allowed to like another person. It's not like I was confessing my love or anything. Good. Rin acknowledged. What are your plans? Well, I haven't really thought much past this point. I scratched my cheek. I have a few ideas I'll need to double check on. What kind of clothes will she need? Is it inside or outside? Will she need special shoes, maybe some kind of dancing? Or are you going for something classic, maybe just a movie and dinner? Rin started to bombard me with questions. Mostly outside, a bit of walking, and somewhat warm weather. I listed off, thinking about it. Oh shit. What? I don't actually have any money. Well, at least mundane currency. Idiot. Rin sighed. I turned towards the old man. So how about that pocket change you mentioned? He just laughed, waving his hand, making a piece of parchment fly towards me. I read it over, furrowing my brow a few times. Are you seriously trying to extort me? I grumbled, taking out a few items in my ring. These metals should work fine, though you may want to double check, and here's a few more gems, the quality should be about what you need. I looked over everything I sat on the table. How is the project progressing? Do you have all the resources you require, or do you need me to fetch some other stuff? I really wanted my staff back. I felt weird not having it with me. Not like I was feeling vulnerable, but maybe I just didn't like my things being out of my grasp. It's good, I should be able to get the gateway up and running in a few days if these work as intended. Zelrich stated, rubbing his chin. I'll give you access to my accounts here in England, it should be much more than you will need. Yeah, that's a bit of an understatement. Just his mundane currency was in the millions, that wasn't even touching things like stock or other forms of wealth. Actually, I think he has a garage somewhere with a couple dozen cars, definitely going to raid that at some point. Now I need to take her shopping. She started giggling to herself. Shoes, dresses, what else? Well, it seems like Saber will be in good hands. Actually, I need new clothes too. And shoes. Now that I think about it, my whole wardrobe needs an upgrade, from this singular outfit I've been wearing for a whole month. Magic or not, I'm sick of it, I will want to look my best when I take Artoria out. Now the thought of her in a cute dress won't disappear from my mind. I had been running around for a couple days now, getting several things sorted and making some preparations. To say I wasn't the least bit excited for my date would be a lie. Truthfully, I've never been on a date before, so sue me. Well, at least in the context that someone my age and origin would recognize as a date. Old man. I entered my grandfather's office. Have a seat. He said smoothly, gesturing towards one of the chairs. There was a pleasant silence as he finished up whatever work he was doing. We haven't had a chance to sit down and talk. That's true. I admitted. You used our first meeting as a learning experience for Rin. I let out a small sigh. Not that I'm complaining, but if it were anyone else, I would have been extremely upset. He hummed in agreement. She's still a bit immature, I wanted to expand her worldview a bit. He stroked his beard. And there was no good way to let her see the wider world. I think this method had the least effect on her mentality. Except for that inferiority complex she has going on. I snorted. Yes, well, that isn't something that can be handled overnight. He smiled slightly. You did a wonderful job of opening her eyes though, I am infinity grateful for that. Yeah, she would have to work through some of her own issues by herself, we can only help so much. I don't need your gratitude, I care about her just as you do. I waved him off. I still have some memories of her before, I couldn't just sit back. She was a good girl, still a bit hard-headed and arrogant right now, but she matures quickly. Not that I could exactly throw stones from my glass house over here. I'm tempted to ask about that, but I think I would like to look forward to the years to come before the world becomes a bit more chaotic. A small smile graced his face. 100 years, give or take. It's not long to prepare, even when we can bullshit the timeline a bit. Language. He chided lightly. You have a bit more freedom than I do in that regard. You have more freedom than I do to explore other worlds. I can only give a few cursory glances at world lines away from Gaia, while you can walk upon them. And you think that our salvation may be out there? Salvation? He laughed. I never believed in anything like that when I was devising my strategies. I never thought something like you would even exist. I'm just playing any card I can get my hands on to keep the world spinning. He shook his head, an aged smile gracing his face. You weren't my first attempt at skewing fate in my favor. I tried many ridiculous experiments. There was one point where I even theorized the resurrection of Albion, or maybe refining its corpse into a mystic code. Yeah, right, you just wanted a dragon to ride on. I called him out, because that is exactly what I would want. That was only 10% of my intention. He admitted. Yeah, you can't lie to me, old man, I know exactly how you think. What about your granddaughters? I used air quotes to emphasis. Why ask questions you already know? He was the one to sigh this time. Altrouge Brunestad is just as rebellious, even if the dead apostle ancestors aren't present here. She still hasn't forgiven me for tricking her pet into being sealed. Thankfully, she stopped acting up a few centuries ago, but only God knows what she'll do when the board finally gets set. Maybe I should go pay her a visit. The daughter of a true ancestor and a dead apostle, one of only 2 remaining beings that are allowed to carry the name Brunestad, after the Crimson Moon Brunestad. She was frighteningly powerful, even if she wasn't a true ancestor herself. And Arcuade is sleeping, which is the best case for everyone. I said quietly. I saw his expression, he truly cared for the last true ancestor. We both knew that if the forces dwelling deep within that carefree girl could potentially awaken if she got swept up in the battle that may come. It almost seems unfair how much easier it is to destroy the world than to protect it. Even if it seems unfair, there is still a chance. What's the saying, the heavens never block all paths? I smiled lightly. Once Rin gets up to standard, she can also start traveling, searching for her own fortune. Which will be another decent skew of fate in our favor. I give it 10 years before she is ready, maybe 20 at the most. He looked distant, calculating in his head. I agreed with his thoughts, that seemed about what I would expect if she didn't make any surprising leaps in that time frame. Well, who knows, she's a smart girl, some lucky chance could propel her years ahead of schedule. I could give her a hand, the last world I went to had some good opportunities for her to spread her wings. I offered. I also have some people back there that could watch over her, but I may have also left some dangers in my wake. Lots of good stuff for someone in Rin's situation. I'm sure she could bloom quite well in that environment. I haven't had a chance to peek over there. He looked a bit interested. I've only explored a small fraction, but I couldn't help but fall in love with the place. I even got myself a woman over there waiting for me. I smiled. And you're trying to woo dear Artoria, bold, aren't you? He raised an eyebrow. If anything serious comes after this date, I'll be forthright, but for now I just want her to enjoy her time and maybe get a new perspective on her second life. I wasn't one to lie about something significant like that. A healthy relationship can't be built on lies. As long as you understand. He nodded. That reminds me. He sat up, shuffling over to a cabinet and searching through some papers. Here we are. He sat the parchment on the desk. I made a little list of some world lines and their coordinates if you wish to visit them in the future. I think some of them may have some things you might want. I just quietly put it away in my ring. No need to get distracted right now, I still need to go find my teacher before I start treading this path. Your foundation is a mess. He said without any sympathy for my feelings. I know, I've been made abundantly clear how disorganized I am. I was so focused on just grabbing anything that I fancied that I'm a mess. Well, the immortal witch should be able to sort you out. He chuckled. I'm a bit interested in the land of shadows, I do hope you will regale me with some tales when you return. He smiled wistfully. Do you have any plans of returning to your birthplace? I couldn't help but wince, choosing not to answer. It's going to remain a thorn in your heart if you don't go back. He explained. Not to mention the debt you owe. I know. I said curtly. It's just, I don't have many good memories there and no one to go back to. Maybe I can visit Mother, put some flowers on her grave. His expression softened. Well, think about it another way, there are plenty of good things there for you to grab. He shrugged. You already stole something of significance, what more harm could you cause? You don't need to remind me. My reluctance does not mean I'm ignoring my debt. My tic presented itself again as I ran a hand through my hair unconsciously. I'll head back and take a look after I get back from the land of shadows. When you return after that, I do have something I need done if you're interested. Like what? There is a world line near us that is cut off from my view. I have some ideas of what's happening and the general outline, but I would like a more in-depth look and you would be the perfect person to investigate. Close to us is a very relative thing to say. Distance is a misnomer, a concept we attach because it makes us feel more comfortable. Other world lines are both infinitely close and infinitely far away. Rin not ready for something like that? She's usually good about running errands. No. He shook his head lightly. This is beyond her abilities, even if Saber ventures with her, I don't know if she would survive. Oh. Color me curious now, I don't recall something like this in my memories. Little surprises are life's joy. He perked up a bit. There's this organization called Chaldea. Actually, why don't we wait until you get back? It's a very long-winded explanation. Whatever, I'll hear the rest of the explanation later, I already have a lot on my plate. That is true, you have a date with Miss Pendragon soon. He smiled, teasingly. I wonder if I'll have some great-grandchildren to spoil in the future. Fuck off. I snorted. Besides, it's highly unlikely for a servant to even have children, to call it 1 in a million would be generous. Adding on my heritage, make that 1 in a billion. As strange as it was, servants can have children with humans. The concepts inherent in their sublimation onto our realm of existence. They are emboldened by the collective human unconscious, and the idea of reproduction is so far ingrained on us as a race that it stays within them even with ether-based vessels. Are children something you would want in the future? He asked me with some interest. Now that I think about it, Zelrich can't have children himself anymore. A side effect of his battle with the Crimson Moon, he burnt through a lot of his life force. Maybe this was a desire I kept over from my previous life? I scrunched my eyebrows, mulling the question over. I want a big family. I couldn't help but smile picturing Meridia trying wrangle a few of our kids even if it was something not possible. I felt a strange resolve in my heart. So what if it wasn't possible? When did that ever stop me from doing things? I'll make it possible, there has to be some method across the infinite expanse that has a method. It would be a long-term goal for now, but first, well, I need to make some final preparations for my date. I'll catch you later, old man. I looked myself over in the mirror. Hair was nice and tidy, clothes were clean even if they weren't exactly as high quality as I usually enjoy, but my old ones were almost ripping in certain places. Otherwise, everything looked rather good. It's kind of weird that I hadn't seen Artoria in the past couple days, almost like she disappeared after I told her what time I would be taking her out. Well, Rin wasn't to be seen either, I think she took Artoria out shopping and whatnot. Speak of the devil, I heard the door opening to their private quarters just as I stepped out of my own area. Rin stepped out first, giving me a smirk as Artoria followed behind her. Saber wanted to know your thoughts. Rin said with a smile. Rin. Saber squeaked, her face turning red. It's amusing because she was wearing just normal clothes, jeans, a blue blouse and a scarf around her neck. Except this was probably a big step for her, someone who never cared about her casual dress before. You look good. I said honestly. I heard Artoria let out a cute little noise as her flush deepened. Rin just shot me a thumbs up, one I returned. I offered my hand. Ready to go? Yes. She smiled brilliantly, offering her own up. I opened up a portal, taking her through with me. There was no large pause between movements, one moment we were at the house, and the next we were in between some buildings in another part of the world. Welcome to America. I said, helping her through. She blinked looking around. I am curious, what plans have you in store for us this evening? She looked up at me as we walked out from our secluded little alley. Well, I had several thoughts initially. I admitted. Maybe a romantic dinner somewhere. Perhaps something a bit more modern, like a movie or something, but then I realized that I just wanted you to have fun. Fun? She questioned. Regardless of how our relationship turns out, whether it be staying as friends after today or maybe we pursue something more, I wanted you to enjoy yourself. We turned another corner, encountering a large crowd of people, fences up high and tents spread out everywhere with many decorations set up. And I thought you would find this amusing. It was a Renaissance fair. Why are they dressed like this? She looked around in confusion, looking at people dressed, or at least attempting to, dress like people from her era. Some walking around in chainmail, others in fabrics that wouldn't look out of place on peasants. For fun. I replied with a chuckle. You can consider the people to be actors of sorts, they play their parts and allow people to experience a culture long past. I explained, realistically, it's far off from what you would be familiar with, but I thought you would get a kick to see how people interpret what you lived and how they enjoy it. Can we? She took a step towards the entrance, clearly interested. Of course, why else are we here? I smiled, seeing the small bit of excitement on her face. There was no entrance fee, one of those types of places that kills you on all the other costs. Mutton, fresh mutton for sale. A larger man behind a stall shouted. Come test your luck, can you pull the sword from the stone? Another dressed as a knight was handing out flyers to passerbys. Be our lucky winner and sit in the king's seat during the joust. 3 tries, $10, can you hit the bullseyes thrice and win the prize? A third waved around his axes as he tried to goad people into playing his game. A few women dressed in elaborate dresses passed by, flanked by a couple knights, giving us winks and flirtatious smiles as they passed, doing rounds about the fair ground. There were a cavalcade of horribly fake accents and wrongly used, old, words that seemed to accompany every person dressed up. This is... she said quietly, not quite finding the right words. Do the modern people truly look back at us like this? She let out a small laugh, growing quite a bit louder as she placed a hand over her mouth. It is like I'm watching a play from back home. She took a moment to calm back down. This is wonderful. She finally said. Good, I was hoping she would like the idea behind this. What do you want to do first? She looked at me, then turned her head every which way before finally pointing. There. She pulled me along towards the stables, offering horse rides. $10 per person. The man standing at the entrance said as we approached. Only got one in right now, the others are being used. You can wait or ride together, if you need help we have a trainer on standby. Ah, the days before people needed to protect themselves so thoroughly from litigation. Give it a couple decades and I would have to sign a contract before even seeing a live horse in a place like this. We stepped inside, a woman greeted us, brushing the mane of a beautiful stallion. She looked at us, setting it down. Are you both riding together or separately? Together. Artoria said. I just blinked in surprise but didn't dissuade it. And have you ever ridden before? The trainer asked. Yes, I am very familiar with horses, I raised several and rode them all my life. She nodded, clearly excited. Good, well, Pebbles here isn't he fastest, but he has a good temper and enjoys a nice ride. She gentle pat the big horse that gave a small noise at her ushering. Artoria, with grace that was hard to describe, climbed up the horse. She looked at me, ushering me up as well. I've ridden horses before, but never as the second. I mused, setting myself up behind her. How tightly do you want me to hang on, my knight? I teased as her face turned a tad red. And make sure you wrap your arms around me tightly, I do not wish for you to fall off. She didn't turn around, but I could see her cute little blush. I of course followed directions. There was the urge to tease her, not sexually mind you, I had standards, but maybe see her get more flustered. But, she was really excited for this whole thing, who knows how long it's been since she's been on a horse. I would rather not distract her too much and allow her to enjoy the experience again. The horse practically stood at attention, it straightened up and moved out with a grace I could only assume came from Artoria's servant nature. Did she having a riding skill? I'm like 90% sure she did. The specialist led us out into an open field behind the building. There were a couple other riders, gently trotting around. I think I spotted a little girl riding a horse with her mom walking right beside her. Artoria was gentle on the reins as she ran a hand down the horse's mane. Hello Pebbles. I heard Artoria whisper. Let us see what you can do, shall we? Almost as if understanding her, Pebbles made a noise of compliment. The horse began trotting lightly, slowly picking up speed. There were a few hurdles set up, I don't think we were intended to use them. But that didn't seem to deter Artoria any. Yah! She called out, giving the horse a command as it took off. A little surprise made me hold on to her a little tighter. Without any effort the stallion cleared the first hurdle, jumping it with no issue. Moving between each one, clearing all of them as the majestic animal excitedly did a lap around the field at Artoria's ushering. She expertly led the horse to continue several maneuvers and parade around the entire arena as if he owned it. Well done, Pebbles, you are a fine steed, and I would have been honored to ride you into battle. She patted the animal who seemed overjoyed at her affection. She just allowed the horse to trot around, moving him in any which direction, just enjoying the ride a bit longer before returning. Want to feed him? I poked my companion, as we slid of the horse, getting her to eye the carrots in the corner. Yes, he did well, he deserves a reward. She grabbed a couple carrots, slowly feeding them to her new friend. You may have a few years on you, but you ride like a young stallion. She cooed to the happy animal. Where to next? She asked as we left the stables, smiling brightly. I could only imagine, riding horses were an intrinsic part of her past, probably something she grew up doing and loving as a result. How long had it actually been since she sat behind the reins? I saw something interesting before. I smiled, walking at her side down the fair grounds. 3 throws for $10. A man shouted, wearing some kind of wool or leather clothing. Hit the bullseye 3 times and win a prize. What's the prize? I asked, as we got close. He gestured towards his stand with some large stuffed animals. A pick of the lot. I smiled, handing him the money for 2 sets as I handed one over Artoria, giving her a look. A competition, then? Her lips curled up. You dare to challenge me after our last bout? Mayhaps you intend to propose more terms for this competition once again. Well, I hadn't planned on it, how about you make the stakes then? Your arrogance shall be your undoing. She beamed with confidence. If I win, I shall sample all the foodstuffs here at the cost of your purse. Well, technically it's Zelrich's purse, but okay. Then if I win, I want Rin to pick out another outfit for you to wear. Rin has good taste and I wanted to help Artoria break out of her shell without being too forward. She stiffened, her face turning red again. The terms are acceptable. She said quietly, taking up a position. Huh, was I missing something here? Ladies first? I offered, gesturing for her to step ahead. She nodded politely, standing still holding one axe up. With a casual throw, it embedded itself deep within of the targets, a cut-off log with a painted bullseye on it. It seems I have taken the lead. I tossed my axe up, getting a feel for the weight, aiming towards the same target. I turned my heads towards her, making eye contact as I threw it. There was a loud thump as I knew I hit the target and saw her brow furrow. Well then. I smirked. She huffed cutely, getting a bit more serious. She truly is a very competitive person, but it is still just as adorable as everything else about her. Ha! She threw with a bit more force, the axe burying deep inside the log. Yes, I am very familiar with horses, I raised several and rode them all my life. She nodded, clearly excited. Good, well, Pebbles here isn't he fastest, but he has a good temper and enjoys a nice ride. She gentle pat the big horse that gave a small noise at her ushering. Artoria, with grace that was hard to describe, climbed up the horse. She looked at me, ushering me up as well. I've ridden horses before, but never as the second. I mused, setting myself up behind her. How tightly do you want me to hang on, my knight? I teased as her face turned a tad red. And make sure you wrap your arms around me tightly, I do not wish for you to fall off. She didn't turn around, but I could see her cute little blush. I of course followed directions. There was the urge to tease her, not sexually mind you, I had standards, but maybe see her get more flustered. But, she was really excited for this whole thing, who knows how long it's been since she's been on a horse. I would rather not distract her too much and allow her to enjoy the experience again. The horse practically stood at attention, it straightened up and moved out with a grace I could only assume came from Artoria's servant nature. Did she having a riding skill? I'm like 90% sure she did. The specialist led us out into an open field behind the building. There were a couple other riders, gently trotting around. I think I spotted a little girl riding a horse with her mom walking right beside her. Artoria was gentle on the reins as she ran a hand down the horse's mane. Hello Pebbles. I heard Artoria whisper. Let us see what you can do, shall we? Almost as if understanding her, Pebbles made a noise of compliment. The horse began trotting lightly, slowly picking up speed. There were a few hurdles set up I don't think we were intended to use them. But that didn't seem to deter Artoria any. Yah! She called out, giving the horse a command as it took off. A little surprise made me hold on to her a little tighter. Without any effort the stallion cleared the first hurdle, jumping it with no issue. Moving between each one, clearing all of them as the majestic animal excitedly did a lap around the field at Artoria's ushering. She expertly led the horse to continue several maneuvers and parade around the entire arena as if he owned it. Well done, Pebbles, you are a fine steed, and I would have been honored to ride you into battle. She pated the animal who seemed overjoyed at her affection. She just allowed the horse to trot around, moving him in any which direction, just enjoying the ride a bit longer before returning. Want to feed him? I poked my companion, as we slid of the horse, getting her to eye the carrots in the corner. Yes, he did well, he deserves a reward. She grabbed a couple carrots, slowly feeding them to her new friend. You may have a few years on you, but you ride like a young stallion. She cooed to the happy animal. Where to next? She asked as we left the stables, smiling brightly. I could only imagine, riding horses were an intrinsic part of her past, probably something she grew up doing and loving as a result. How long had it actually been since she sat behind the reins? I saw something interesting before. I smiled, walking at her side down the fairgrounds. 3 throws for $10. A man shouted, wearing some kind of wool or leather clothing. Hit the bullseye 3 times and win a prize. What's the prize? I asked, as we got close. He gestured towards his stand with some large stuffed animals. A pick of the lot. I smiled, handing him the money for 2 sets as I handed one over Artoria, giving her a look. A competition, then? Her lips curled up. You dare to challenge me after our last bout? Mayhaps you intend to propose more terms for this competition once again. Well, I hadn't planned on it, how about you make the stakes then? Your arrogance shall be your undoing. She beamed with confidence. If I win, I shall sample all the foodstuffs here at the cost of your purse. Well, technically it's Zelrich's purse, but okay. Then if I win, I want Rin to pick out another outfit for you to wear. Rin has good taste and I wanted to help Artoria break out of her shell without being too forward. She stiffened, her face turning red again. The terms are acceptable. She said quietly, taking up a position. Huh, was I missing something here? Ladies first? I offered, gesturing for her to step ahead. She nodded politely, standing still holding one axe up. With a casual throw, it embedded itself deep within of the targets, a cut-off log with a painted bullseye on it. It seems I have taken the lead. I tossed my axe up, getting a feel for the weight, aiming towards the same target. I turned my head towards her, making eye contact as I threw it. There was a loud thump as I knew I hit the target and saw her brow furrow. Well then. I smirked. She huffed cutely, getting a bit more serious. She truly is a very competitive person, but it is still just as adorable as everything else about her. Ha! She threw with a bit more force, the axe burying deep inside the log. I gave no fanfare this time, copying her motion and also hitting the bullseye, though mine barely made it inside. Careful, one misstep and you may very well lose. She smirked herself. Someone sounds confident, why don't I go first on this last one then? I do not mind, may you have any perceived advantage, you shall need it. She said simply. Well, alrighty then. I aimed up, and my foot dug into the ground as I pulled on more strength than before. My axe hurled towards the target, burying deep inside and cracking the piece of wood, making it fall to the ground. Oh no, it looks like the target is destroyed, I guess I win by default. You cheat! She exclaimed. I have no idea what you're talking about. I looked away. Dastardly cheater. Oh look, prizes. I ignored her complaints, moving towards the booth. Well, I guess that counts. The man at the counter just shrugged. Which one you want? I turned towards Artoria. Well? The lion, she looked at it a bit expectantly. The man smiled, picking the large, stuffed lion, off the wall. For your girlfriend. He handed it over to me. Artoria turned just a bit redder, making me laugh a little. Can I offer my prize as a peace offering, my lady? I bowed my head in an exaggerated manner. You are forgiven for this transgression. She happily grabbed the stuffed animal, inspecting and prodding it with a bit of glee. Well then, I believe you have a wager to uphold later. I smirked. Rin is going to be relentless with her teasing. How about we get something to eat then? I wanted to try all the foods here, I heard fair food has its own charm. I would like that. She gave a smile that could melt ice. What is that? A dainty little hand pointed towards a food stall. Looks like a turkey leg wrapped in bacon. How obscenely decadent. Want one? Yes. This is about how the next hour or so went. As we tried the various foods all around the fairgrounds. What are those? Deep-fried bananas. Surprisingly yummy. What about these? Looks like a cheeseburger with donuts for buns. Once again, my gluttonous side thanked me. I think we got through all the staple foods at the fair and even moved through their own little niche of medieval foods as well. I thought I could hold my stomach well, but this little girl out-ate me at every turn. Not that I really cared, if it made her happy, I would keep going. I'm a little curious, why did you agree to go on this date with me? I was honestly curious. You were willing to fight me, she replied. Mayhaps, I was moved, to be willing to go to such length. She stopped for a moment, deep in thought. I wish to understand. Her head ducked down, unable to grasp the correct words. Are those caramel apples? She suddenly grabbed me hand, dragging me towards another food stall. I wish to partake. Subtlety, thy name is not Artoria. Well, I wouldn't push if she didn't seem to understand it herself. Just let the chips fall where they may. Regardless, it was pleasing to see the sheer joyful expression that Artoria wore for most of the day. It made this entirely worth it without any secondary thoughts. Oh, let's play this one. I pulled on her this time, she followed my direction without any complaint. 5 darts, pop as many balloons as you can. The man sitting behind the counter casually said, grabbing a few bills I put down. Artoria eyed one of the darts, moving it between her fingers before aiming and tossing. I missed. She seemed annoyed with herself. I don't suppose you've ever used darts before? Nay, it was something that never came up in my life. She shook her head, throwing another and popping a balloon. Yes. She happily blurted out, before regaining her composure, and tossing another with a loud pop following. Pop. Pop. Her few more darts finished up. Good job, you got the small prize. The man said, gesturing towards the back. Which one you want? The dragon. She pointed out, towards a green stuffed animal. I guess it's not surprising that it follows a certain theme based on the place. This one is yours. Artoria handed it to me, clutching her own lion, cheeks just the slightest pink. You had gifted me with one, so it is only proper that I return the favor. She looked rather pleased with herself. I love it, I said with a smile, happily accepting the gift. He shall be named Drake Jr. Today was one of the most fun days I've had, but all good things had to come to an end. We both noticed the sun starting to dip in the sky, the people begin to head out as stalls and shops began to close up for the evening. Thank you. Artoria said quietly, dipping her head. I have not had so much enjoyment for a very long time. Believe me, the pleasure was truly mine. It's not like my life was filled with days like these. Rin had explained to me what dates were the other day, differentiating between this and what courtship was back from my era. She looked pensive. I find the idea agreeable, a preliminary outing to see if individuals would be good matches to further pursue romantic goals. She stopped looking up at me. Oh, was that my K to ask her out again? Artoria. I said firmly. I would like to make it clear that I like you. If you want to keep going, do more dates, get to know each other better and maybe go a step further, I would be overjoyed. I gave her hand a little squeeze. But I do have some things you need to know if you want to walk this path. Take some time to yourself, figure out your own feelings, then get back to me when you're ready. She didn't look put off in the slightest, maybe even a bit relieved. I think she was under the misconception that she had to give me an answer right here and now. Thank you. She said lightly, seemingly content. Why don't I take you home then? I chuckled softly, taking her to a secluded corner and opening a portal for both of us. We stepped through to an empty house. It looks like Rin and Zelrich were nowhere to be found. Well, usually it would be my job to walk you home, but that whole procedure is a bit wonky here. I just shook my head. She looked up at me, cheeks splashed with the faintest pink that I recognized all too well at this point. I had a wonderful time. She turned her head looking every which way before standing up on her toes and placing her lips against my cheek ever so quickly. She disappeared almost immediately into her room, leaving me there brushing my hand against my cheek. Artoria Pendragon POV. I kissed him. The image continued to overtake all my thoughts. It was only on the cheek, but it was a kiss nonetheless. Was he put off by my forwardness? Do men dislike women who take the initiative? Rin told me that it was a common occurrence at the end of one of these dates. What do I do now? Do I request for further courtship? No, that isn't the correct word any longer. Dating, becoming one's girlfriend, there are different steps in this era. I was unsure of how to proceed. Do I wait for him? Do I wish to continue this dating? My heart was beating rapidly, but I was unsure of myself. Is this even the proper path to take? I am technically a fleeting existence, though with Wilhelm or Zelrich present, I do not doubt their means to keep me anchored. Even still. He said that he likes me. Never have I had a man confess affection for me, and I would be lying if I said it did not make me happy. Saber. I turned around to see Rin enter the room. I was too lost in my own thoughts to even notice her. Girl, you better spill all the details. We had a lovely time. I stated plainly. Yeah, no. I need more than that. Rin replied. Where did you go? What did you do? Did he wear protection? Rin. I shouted uncontrollably. I could feel my face heating up. Fine, but spill everything, start from the beginning. She smirked. He took me to a fair over in the colonies. All the way over in America. What kind of fair? They were dressed up in attire reminiscent of my era. I explained, without getting into the details. Oh, one of those. She exclaimed. How was it? Did you have fun? I suppose such a thing is common knowledge then. The Holy Grail deposited memories unto me of the era, but there's simply too many details it did not fill in. It would have been most embarrassing thinking an automobile was some type of beast had the information been less available. It was amusing to see them act out their parts. I smiled. And yes, it was an enjoyable evening. I had not had such an enjoyable time in many years. Well, what did you do? They had a stable prepared for their patrons to ride horses. I explained. We shared a horse together. He sat behind me. There was nothing wrong with two people riding together on a horse. Rin's lips curled up, giving me a look that I knew all too well. Oh ho, did his hands roam? She made a lewd grabbing motion with her hands. Rin. I let out an indignant complaint. Truly Rin's perversions come out in private. He was a perfect gentleman. Boring, so he didn't take advantage of you? She said a bit more seriously, perhaps with some concern. No, his hands never attempted to molest me. I noticed her concerns and I did not want her to think incorrectly. Good, otherwise I would cut off his D. Rin. I huffed. Only one date and you're already so attached, she laughed. So, what else did you do? We merely partook in the facilities. I stated. There were many activities, we even competed in axe throwing. Did you throw him off with how competitive you get? I am not competitive. I said evenly. I merely have a healthy interest in winning. I am not overly competitive, regardless of what Rin, Kay, Sir Ector, and especially Merlin, have said. Rin looked unconvinced. If I were as competitive as you say, then I should have held a grudge for losing, even if he did cheat. He had escaped my ire with his gift. Thankfully I had managed to hide my bounty before Rin had seen, lest her unceasing teasing continue. Did you wager anything, maybe a steamy night in a hotel somewhere? Rin wiggled her eyebrows. We did no such thing. I crossed my arms. He merely. What? It is unimportant, said quietly. The thoughts on some of the outfits Rin made me try on, I would die of embarrassment if I were to wear them in public. Look at you, going all red. Rin laughed. It must have been something good. Rin's relentless teasing. I should have expected it to make a comeback at this moment. So what are your plans? One and done, or are you thinking of being his girlfriend? She asked, her tones becoming a bit more sincere. He doesn't seem like a bad guy, even if I have trouble coping with his race. I don't want to judge him based on that. I'm sure you can judge him better than I can. Yes, his nature still gives me pause. I do not judge him on his family, one cannot control the circumstances of their birth, but knowing he is born of those from hell is still an odd thought to consider. I have believed in my own instinct for my entire life, it has yet to fail me, and so far, Wilhelm has been nothing but sincere. I also believe that the Wizard Marshal would not allow a dangerous individual so much access to his home. I do not know. I said honestly. I have never considered a romantic pursuit in my life, much less this second one I have been gifted with. I was not aware I had any appeal as a woman until he thoroughly crushed that thought. I've been telling you this for years. Rin threw her arms up. But no, all it takes is one cute guy to tell you you're pretty and suddenly you're all hunky-dory. She sighed, slumping her shoulders. Do you want something like this? Something more than just a friend? I would not be against it, I said quietly. He has many attributes that I find attractive in a partner. He is objectively handsome. I focused as to not blush in front of Rin lest she tease me again. I enjoyed spending time with him, and learning the few things he has shared. But I still don't know much about him. Indeed, we did not delve much into our pasts, merely enjoying our time together. Then go on more dates, spend more time with him. You don't have to get engaged or anything like that. Is it truly that simple? Mayhaps I am simply overthinking everything. Wilhelm POV. It had been a bit over a day since my date with Artoria. I haven't seen either her or Rin in this time, merely helping the old man set things up and run some errands. Hey, old man. I walked up towards Zelrich. He was standing over a table full of materials. Perfect, I was going to contact you soon. He didn't even look up. I believe I have made a breakthrough, we should be up and running very soon. I took a look around this abandoned courtyard, one of Zelrich's properties somewhere in the world he purchased many centuries ago. A nice spot for some experiments and one of his safe houses that litter the planet. The staff of Magnus was floating in the center of a ritual circle on the ground, filled with many materials, most of which I recognized at a glance. Some would require actual inspection to ascertain their properties. Curious, you replaced the blessed iron with ebony. I looked over the ritual site, mentally tracing the spell's intent. Well spotted. I realized that I would need to recalibrate several mechanisms with the addition of your materials, otherwise it would have taken much too long to find something more suitable. He stepped next to me. If you look towards the center, you would notice I inversed the flow, instead of the magical energy flowing where the blessed iron should have been, instead, this ebony is acting as a dam to redirect it to the other corners. Yes, you did similar things with orichalcum, and is that a paste made from death bell, troll's fat, and fire salts? I admired his work. Indeed, you brought back some interesting stuff. He gave a small smile. If Rin ever does head over there, I'm going to have to give her an assignment to bring back a large portion of ingredients. He chuckled, though I could tell he was not kidding. Remind me to show you their enchanting system, I think you will find it particularly intriguing. I blinked, almost forgetting an important bit. I almost forgot. I withdrew several soul stones, bigger than I have used in the past. These should help stabilize the portal's initial actualization. Fascinating. He held one up to his eye. I would very much like to investigate these at a later time. I could understand, a foreign system was always something fun to discover. Soul stones are rather interesting, I wouldn't mind looking over any notes if you research the subject. That is a fair trade if you provide me with suitable resources. Zelrich nodded. Equivalent exchange, one of the driving forces in the magical community. It was the reason Rin even made it into Zelrich's eye in the first place. Her ancestor did him a small favor, so he gave the man a little something to work on for future generations. Speaking of a certain Magus. You want to grab Rin to help us with the finishing touches? It would be a good hands-on experience. If you wouldn't mind. He asked sincerely. Of course. I simply smiled, watching him disappear into a porta. Almost time, everything is here and ready. Next stop, the Land of Shadows. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.